welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing an end of school year review and just kind of going through our year and letting you know how everything went, things we liked, things we changed, all that kind of stuff. So if you enjoy this type of content and other homeschool and lifestyle content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. All right, so I wanted to start off just by talking about a few things that stood out to me from this year. I don't know if I categorize them as memories, but sort of just things that were either a little bit different, that helped me a lot. And then I'll go in and kind of go through curriculum and talk about it. I already talk about the curriculum a lot in the quarterly videos, and so I won't go into crazy detail, but I'll mention a few different things about them. So 2 things that made a huge impact on our homeschool year that helped me a lot was 1, setting out schoolwork every single night. I have done this sporadically the last several years, but until this last year, I was not as consistent about it. And I think I did it every single night, you know, when we had school. And it made such a big difference to have everything set out. I wasn't as good about setting out stuff for my toddler, but sometimes I was, sometimes I wasn't. When I was, things went better usually. But usually he goes through stuff in 2 seconds, so then he's looking for more stuff. So anyway, but setting out all my kids' schoolwork, making sure everything was ready to go. All the science stuff was prepped. I could look through the lesson real quick and make sure that all the supplies were easy to get. If it wasn't gonna be in the way or whatever, or my toddlers weren't gonna get to it, I'd set all the science stuff out the night before. If not, I just leave myself a little note on the board, and then I'd go grab all the science stuff in the morning when I knew they weren't gonna be able to get into it. So the second thing is writing on the board. So I started writing our agenda basically on the board for every single day. And a lot of times it was kind of repeating itself, but it helped me so much because if there was a few housekeeping type of items that needed to go up there, I could put those up, we need to discuss this thing. Or sometimes my kids would do oral reports, so I could write whose turn it was to do an oral report, or if they were in charge of something with scriptures, or a certain read aloud. And then I also would put a journal question up on the board as well that they would put in their little notebooks and then answer the question. So that was just so helpful. It helped me stay on task and really think through, because I would write stuff down in my planner of what we needed to do, or at least what I'd like to accomplish. But then I would forget, even if I looked at my planner the night before. Once we get into our group work and start doing it, and my toddlers are crazy and everything, I'm it's hard for me to remember and to focus. So if I can just have it on the board right here, all I have to do is look up and just go down the line, and it just made it so much easier. So that was also another big game changer for me. I think I just did that from January on. I did not do it the whole year, but I started doing it just because I needed something visually that helped me to remember what we were supposed to be doing for school. Another thing that was fun and a little bit different was doing Christmas around the world, but having my kids be in charge of it. There were still some things I was helping with. It's kind of hard for me to completely disconnect because they need help finding activities or crafts or food or things like that, or help making the food for the different countries. But I picked a few countries that I had some resources for, and then they were able to decide which ones they wanted to do, and they could pick an art project to do. They gave a little oral report or some facts about the country. They did a food from the country. So we did Australia, and they did pavlova. They love pavlova. Even I think before Bluey, they love pavlova. And then we did France and made a few different desserts there. And I'm trying to think. So we did, I think my oldest son did Japan, and he did a Christmas cake. It kind of is like a strawberry shortcake, but it's white and red, so it's Santa-esque. And then my other son, I think, did Mexico, and we made a sweet bread type of thing for that one. And we did some different types of ornaments to go with them, and it was just a lot of fun. And again, I still ended up with more to do than I probably wanted to, because that's why I let them do it, because I was get rid of as much stuff for me as possible, delegate. and let them do it. But there were still lots of areas where they needed my help. But it ended up being a lot of fun, and it wasn't as overwhelming as trying to do it all myself or to go through several countries. Just have them be in charge of one country and talk to us about it. The last thing I wanted to mention that kind of stuck out to me about this year was that it was a pretty hard year, mainly because of my 2 little kids. And so right now, they're 3 and almost 2. And so they just, at the beginning, it was just a difficult age the whole year, where they're very loud. My 3-year-old especially is very loud, and they need stuff to do. My 3-year-old gets bored with stuff very, very fast. And then she was a baby, now she's more of a toddler, but she needed attention as well, right? Or she'd throw a fit. She's thrown a lot of tantrums lately. So there was a lot of good things, but when we came in to do group work, it was always just like, I don't know how this is gonna go. It could just be so loud that nobody can hear anything, or they could actually like the activities and snacks they have and be really quiet. And so every day was just an adventure, and sometimes it was a lot and it was very overwhelming. So we'll see how this next year goes. It's always a struggle, but I feel like this year was very hard just because of that. It's one of those things where I want to come in and sit and be able to talk and do things more with my older kids, but it's just hard. Obviously there's the option of trying to get a helper, and my husband is home a lot, but he's working. He doesn't have to work all the time. But I still feel bad just being like, here's the kids, take them away because they're so loud. And sometimes you just do that because he's just so nice. But it was just one of those things where it was just a lot. They were a lot, and it was overwhelming. It was just overstimulating so many days. So hopefully it'll calm down a little bit and we can find some activities that occupy them. Their attention spans are becoming a little bit better. They'll sit and do stuff and not be so loud. So we'll see how it goes, but that made it very, very hard, just having them be so loud and so all over the place every single day, just never knowing what to expect. All right, so I'm gonna just kind of quickly as possible go through curriculum stuff so that we're not here all the time, like all the rest of the day. And like I said, I talk more specifically about stuff in the quarterly videos, so you could go back and watch those if you are interested in more specific things. But for math, I had a child finish Math 7, I had one start Math 7, I have one that started Math 6, and one that finished Math 4. I wrote it down. She finished Math 3 and started Math 4. And so we have been moving through math a lot. And so the things that I want to say here is that we really love Math 7 from The Good and the Beautiful. It's been really, really great for my oldest son who did it, and now my daughter who's doing it. It helps both of them a lot. And then my oldest son, we moved into a new math curriculum. This is the first time in several years that we've had to find a different curriculum so The Good and the Beautiful did come out with Math 8, which was right after he needed a new math curriculum, but we probably still would have gone with a different math curriculum just because he was ready for something more challenging. So we went with Denison Math, and he's doing Algebra 1 right now. And so that was really good, but I was having to look for a new math curriculum, which I haven't had to do in years because we just kept using The Good and the Beautiful. So everything has been going really well with math. I feel like everyone's doing a really good job, and the math that they're currently on is working well for them. So for language arts, we love The Good and the Beautiful's language arts. I feel like it's such a good mix of just so many different things with grammar, geography, spelling, writing, art. I'm like, I can't even name all the things because there's so many. And I really like it because then it's not as boring. It is just doing the same thing over and over, and it's not so much work. Like I don't have to have one book and every single day I have to do grammar out of this book, and then I have writing and I have to do writing out of this book, and then I also have art and I have to do art out of this book, because sometimes that just is so much. And so we were doing fix-it grammar and wordly wise. We were trying out wordly wise. We had done a little fix-it grammar before, this last year, but we only made it like halfway through the year. And sometimes more is just more and less is better. And I found that out. As long as the curriculum has some of those things and focuses on them, it doesn't need to be something they do every single day, and they still are learning it. Sometimes they learn it better because it's not so overwhelming. And with the spiral approach from the good and the beautiful, it helps them come back and remember it better instead of it just being pounded into their heads day after day. Because sometimes that stuff is easier to forget, to be honest, because you're just so sick of it. And so we did get rid of those and aren't doing them again this next year. We're just sticking to the good and the beautiful's language arts. So that was something that we did change about mid-year. It was probably a little bit before the middle of the year. And then for science, we got through 5 units. Yes, from the good and the beautiful. I have all the like teacher books here. I'm gonna drop them if I try to like accordion them out, but I loved all of them. There was a lot of them that were very, very hands-on. So we had motion and simple machines. This one was fun too. At the end, it had a thing where you could build a whole bunch of machines. Like the kids could just kind of do whatever. You give them a bunch of different objects and they can build some simple machines. So that was fun. Wonders of Energy also had a lot of experiments. Chemistry was probably one of my favorites. I never took chemistry, and I probably wouldn't like to actually take chemistry because it is a little bit difficult, but doing all the experiments was a lot of fun for me and for my kids. We all really enjoyed it. And I felt like, so this one is 5th through 8th, where the rest of them are like 3 through 8, and you could adapt to, you know, the 7th and 8th graders. But I felt like it was still fine for my younger kids. You know, they participated where they could and then just watched or observed otherwise. But then we did mammals. This one obviously doesn't have as much experimenting, but it still had a lot of other fun activities and like a sticker thing you could do to mark where animals live in the world. And then we just finished weather and water, which was also a lot of fun. So we all enjoyed these a lot. Like I said, I feel like chemistry was a lot of our favorites, probably because there was just so many experiments. So that could be overwhelming to an extent, not wanting to have to do an experiment every single time you taught a lesson, but it also just made it really fun and engaging because there was always some sort of hands-on experiment to do. The next thing I wanted to mention is history, and I'm mixing this with our read alouds since I think all of our read alouds were either historical fiction or they were nonfiction about a person in history. And so I'm gonna look at my notes here because I want to remember all the places we talked about. So I got a whole bunch of mini units from the Waldock Way. She has mini units for people in history, for places, and different things like that. And so I gotten a bunch of those, and she has, on the first page of it, has different games, different books, all the like fun resources for the place. And so we mostly read the books. We didn't do as many activities. We did get a few of the games and my kids enjoyed playing those, but mostly I liked having the book resources, and that's what we kind of incorporated into our read alouds. So when I show you our read alouds that we got through, there's not as many because these ones were also part of that. So we were reading lots of books. It just wasn't all these other read alouds that I'm gonna show you. So for history, I didn't bring all these books down because it would have been a lot. And some of them might be on this shelf over here. But so we talked about Pompeii, we talked about the Titanic, we talked about Everest, Mount Everest, like the history of it and some of the stories from like the first people actually making it to the summit and things like that. And then we finished with the San Francisco earthquake. I know I at least had one more unit, like the Hurricane Katrina one, but I don't know if I had any more than that. I was thinking more that we'd get through them faster, but it really ended up only being about 1 a quarter because we would read several books for each one. And most of the time we'd start off with something that was a little bit more nonfiction, and then we'd read something more historical fiction to go along with it. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I think my kids enjoyed it. It's how I prefer to learn about history because it just is not as boring as just sitting and learning about dates and stuff like that. So I think it was more enjoyable for all of us. And so then the books that we read separate from that some that I just had wanted to read, one of the first one we read was Number the Stars. This is something that I read when I was much younger. And so we went through this, and I love World War II time, which again, love is such a weird word to associate with those types of things, like with war times, but I feel like the time period is very interesting to me. So we went through this book first. This one is a fairly quick read. Well, I can't remember if we did that one first. We might have been finishing Ernest Shackleton, but we did read that one at the very beginning of the year. And then we read Ernest Shackleton, or finished it. So this one is a nonfiction book, and it's one of the heroes of history. They also have Christian heroes then and now, so we've read like Corrie ten Boom and stuff. These books are really good, and they're kid friendly and they're interesting enough, but not crazy either. And they are catered more to a younger age group. I'm like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but these books are really good. I've enjoyed them. We have several of them. And so the fun part with this one is read the book. I had already read this book a few years ago, and I've wanted to read it to my kids. So we read it, and then the Endurance documentary is on Disney Plus, at least it was. And so on around Thanksgiving time, we tied blankets for a service project. And while they were tying the blankets, they watched the documentary. So that was really fun and cool for them. And then the last one that we just recently finished was Refugee. This one took us a while to read. It is a longer book, and most days we only can get in about maybe 10 minutes of reading after everything's said and done, and my voice will only last for that long anyways. And this follows 3 different storylines and 3 different time periods, 3 different places, and it's so good. And my kids will say that I was just bawling at the end, so that was fun. And I have a couple other books from him, so if I continue to bawl, maybe we won't be able to read any more of them out loud because that will be good. But those were kind of the books that we read. Again, all of them follow more of like a historical fiction or just a fiction, nonfiction vibe from history, because I think that's a fun way to learn about history, and my kids really seem to enjoy it. The last thing I wanted to mention is geography. If you've been around, you know how I feel about this curriculum. It's mixed. I have mixed feelings about it. And it took us 2 years to complete. Going through all the states just takes a really long time. So this is our 50 states from Knotgrass. It comes with readers, it comes with workbooks, which I really like the workbooks. We only did about half of the readers because I wanted to read more historical fiction books like the ones I was just telling you about. And so I was like, I don't really care for the books that came with this. I'd rather read some of the other ones that I chose. So anyway, it's not a good curriculum. It's not a bad curriculum. I feel like it gets the job done, but I've mentioned before that just teaching geography is tricky and hard because either you don't cover as many states or countries and just go all in on those places, or you can only just kind of go over the surface, glaze the surface. Is that the right word? What do you usually say? I don't know. Graze the surface, is that it? Anyway, and so you can only just barely cover stuff and if you want to get through it all. And I feel like that's hard as well because you want to know more, you want to be able to cook food or do crafts or, talk about the places. So something that I did think was fun though that we did this year that we haven't done before is having my kids do oral reports on some states. So I would look at the states we were going to talk about or that we had just talked about. They would draw out like little papers from them. I just write up a bunch of states because I only have 4 kids that are doing it. So I'd write up however many states we're talking about. They draw out a state, and that's what they would do their oral report on. And it was kind of open to, like, they could do a food, they could do a craft. They needed to tell us something about the state or something they liked, but then they could also do lots of other things. And a lot of my kids were very excited to do that. It also helped them practice a little bit more public speaking, and we talked about how to be respectful when other people are talking. So there was a lot of really good things that came from it. So that was something that I think helped with the curriculum is doing the oral reports, because then my kids were able to dive a little deeper into some of the states that we were talking about. Okay, so when I was going through this video, you're like, whoa, this is very future Jackie, like very future. I filmed this forever ago, that video, the one that you're currently watching about the end of school year review. And so as I was thinking about it, and now as I was editing it, I was like, I didn't even talk about some of my kids' like extra, what are they even called? Electives, that's what they're called. They're elective classes. So my oldest was in 7th grade. And so I let him pick from a list of activities that I thought were doable, and he picked drawing. So we got a Skillshare account or like membership or whatever for the year, and our charter school paid for that. And so he did a lot of stuff with drawing on that, which he really seemed to enjoy. And my husband would help him find some other classes when he'd finish the ones he was working on. And then he did some stuff with Blender as well, which isn't, you know, drawing by hand, but it's more like 3D artwork on the computer and that type of stuff. And I think he would make a really great graphic designer one day, because he loves that kind of stuff. And so he liked doing that as well. He did come say, he's like, it's really hard. And we're like, well, it's supposed to be. I'm like, you gotta just do little, he's like, some of the projects are so hard. It's like, well, yeah, you gotta learn how to do it. Like everything that's new is going to be hard. And so we had to work through that a little bit. So that was his thing that he did. And then my daughter that was in 6th grade, she didn't necessarily have an elective, I guess, not in the same way that you would like in middle school or junior high or high school type of a thing. But for our charter school, you put in different like categories for subjects. So you have math, language arts, and they have like an exploring technology class, but there was also an exploring like family and consumer science education class. And we did that for her. And so I got subscription boxes, like cooking subscription boxes, because they would pay, like our charter paid for it. And so I did some from KiwiCo before I did not know they were getting rid of their cooking subscription, and then they did. So that was funny. So we got like the last 3 quarters before they rebranded, like they're into clubs and stuff like that. And so we did that one, and I actually enjoyed theirs better than some of the other ones. I thought it was really good. They did more of like a theme, like emulsifiers, and then made recipes off of learning about emulsifiers. So it was a little bit more, I don't know, sciencey, not always, but sort of in that way. And then we also did little passports. They have kitchen adventures, which actually I really enjoy. I don't know if my daughter enjoys it as much. Part of the point of doing this is that she's a little bit of a pickier eater, and so it was to branch her out and to try new things. And it was harder for her to get excited about their recipes. So Little Passport started out as just like it's a geography curriculum, and then has branched out, like they've created other crates or whatever, I don't know what they call them, maybe not crates, but they created other subscriptions around that. And so this is one of them, and it's just food from different countries. So every single month she gets one for a different country, and that one we still have for a few more months because it was a year subscription. And some of it's been really fun. There's some of it's been really fun. Sounded like there was supposed to be more to that. There probably was. And she has liked some of it, but again, she just gravitates towards the recipes that look enticing to her instead of the other things. She's willing to make them if I kind of push her a little bit, but has a little bit of a harder time with that. And so I tried to get her to make those things that she was uncomfortable with, but there's still a lot of them that we haven't made. We have all the recipe cards and things like that. And then they give a craft or activity. So she loves putting those together. That was fun for her. She put all the activities together, all the crafts, and that was a good time. But that was the other one. And then when KiwiCo, I realized that they weren't going anymore because we only did the 3-month subscription for that. I got Radish Kids for her, and the Radish Kids has a few different ones. They have one that's just for baking. They have another one that's more like the Little Passports, where it's exploring different places in the world. And then they have a cooking one that incorporates baking and cooking. So it has some desserts and then some like breakfast, lunch, dinner type things. And so I went the baking one since the Little Passports was a little bit more heavy towards meals and not desserts. And she loves the baking part. So she loved the Radish Kids ones. Those were her favorite because of all the baking that she was able to do. They didn't come with like an extra craft, but they came with, you know, little toppings for whatever she was making, or they come with like a little kitchen utensil, things like that. And so far, like that went really well. There was parts of it for both of those two kids that had electives that I feel like we could have done more with it, but it's also just a lot with so many kids trying to keep on top of all the things. And so there's still a lot of recipes for her that we haven't done. And then I also got her some Radish Kids crates to go through the summer and then up until we go to Africa. So she'll be working on those as well throughout that time. But I think for both of them, things went really well. They enjoyed drawing, like my oldest enjoyed drawing and learning Blender, and she loved being in the kitchen and doing all that kind of stuff. And my other kids enjoyed tasting all the things that she made. And so it was a win-win for everyone. But I just thought I'd add that in because I was like, wait, I didn't even talk about any of those things. Maybe you wouldn't have remembered, but maybe people were curious. And so those things went well, and it was a fun little adventure and experiment for both of them. All right, that is my end of year homeschool review. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know how your homeschool year is going, or if it's already done, and how you thought it went as a whole. Did you keep curriculum? Did you have to change a lot of things? And did everything just run super smoothly, or are you ready to pull your hair out? Whatever, we'd love to hear about it in the comments so we can all just, you know, feel good and stressed out together and know that we're not alone. And please remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.